Well, hello and welcome back, my friend. Rich Ingram is joining me this week, and Rich has got a story where he's not just, kind of transitioned over time and had like that curve that so many of us think life is like. Rich has reinvented himself along the way and kind of done this change of who he is, looking for a new identity. And looking back on my life, that's one thing that I've gone through is when it's like I've been laid off and it's like, great, now who am I? So you're going to hear in Rich's story that it's like how he's made that change, and the change doesn't diminish who he is. In fact, it improves who he is. He becomes stronger, more perseverant and resilient along the way. And yeah, looking forward to getting into it. And Rich, how are you doing today, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great. Couldn't be better. Couldn't be better.
Well, you and I have had just an awesome time talking about food, about smoking and boils. I'll tell you what, man, when I go to do crawfish boils, I'm calling you because you're like the expert on stuff. And so, man, I just now I'm like sitting here going, I want to go outside and try this stuff, Rich.
Oh man,
you've got a slew of knowledge, bro.
Yeah. I'm no expert, but I'll tell you, my cousin, he is so good at it's cooking and boiling crawfish that he has buddies that take him. So from Louisiana, he has one buddy that has a kid that's at Wake Forest, and he literally takes him up there so he can boil crawfish for his son's fraternity. And yeah, he's that's how those Cajuns are, man. They know how to cook for sure.
I'll tell you what, man, you had me drooling here, and it's not even lunch yet. So, well, Rich, let's jump in, man. What does life look like for you today on the professional side of things?
So professionally for me, I'm a motivational speaker, and I really, as you just said, I've reinvented myself multiple times just out of necessity. I had to, but what I found was a way to monetize doing what I love. And what I mean by that is along the way, I kept going. So no matter how I was feeling, I kept moving. Like, hey, if I can stay in a forward progression, something has got to change, something, and I'll figure this thing out. And so, now, my day to day is based on connecting with clients, getting up, whether it's at events or for, corporations. I motivate sales teams, leaders, through speaking, and I do some workshops as far as organizational skills, and then how to develop leaders as well. But what I really try and focus on, and this is the big kicker, because it is two-sided. One, it helps me stay where I need to be by continuing to discuss these things with people. And so I developed a framework, and it's the name of my company, Raw Resilience, that's based on purpose, mindset, and process. And so everything starts with purpose and asking why, continually, as many times as we need to figure out, who are we? And I always say that if you were to find what you believe is your purpose and you drive out of the Circle K or whatever it is and get hit by a Mack truck and you're in the hospital in the evening, is your purpose still the same? And if it's not, you need to keep asking why. And so that's what I try and instill in others, is that is the true motivation, is finding out what your purpose is. And when you have that, you are resiliently postured. And so what that helps you do is when you are faced with adversity, you just keep following your purpose. And so that's what I try and do in a professional manner. So my professional and personal lives are very intertwined. But yeah, professionally for me, I love getting on the stage and inspiring others and communicating with others, whether it be on the stage or off the stage. So look, I don't want other people to have to lose an arm to figure the things out that I had to from rock bottom, when the tools and resources are already there. We just need to have a conversation. So that's professionally what I do.
What about on the personal side of things? What does that look like, man? I know you said they're intertwined.
Yeah. So personally, and so I'm kind of branded professionally as an endurance athlete, and and I'm a veteran. But personally, for me, I'm a husband, father of three. So my life and my three children are 5, 3, and 2. So I have a very busy life managing that. But I'm an endurance athlete. So I run ultra marathons. So that takes up a lot of my time. But that's why I say they're intertwined, is because one of the main reasons why I run ultra marathons is because, and I know that I'm sure we'll get to this, but in my past reincarnation, so to speak, I was a mess, man. And so for me, I run, however many, like tomorrow I have a race. It starts at 7 p.m. I'll probably get done at 4 a.m. I do that to maintain my emotional stability, to be able to control the things that I can. Because if I wasn't working so much on running and staying in shape to be able to do the next run, I'd fall apart. I know that. And I would probably go back to drinking and everything else, that is just not good for showing up positively for the people you care about. So for me, yeah, that's personally what I look for. And it's funny, I created this meme, and it's like, what do I think about? When people ask me, what do you think about when you're running? I think about running. What do you think about when you're not running? I think about running. And so, but it really does. And I call it challenge immersion. And what that really is, and it, you can do it in your professional or personal life, but what it is identifying something that aligns with your purpose, and figuring out how you can set an ambitious target to where you are working towards that target every single day. You are immersing yourself in that challenge, because transformation and growth, they only happen through a little bit of discomfort. So when we are, not that's why people always say, like, okay, you're at rock bottom. You only got one place to go. Well, that's when you're the most vulnerable, but I don't mean vulnerable in a negative sense. It's also in a positive sense. Hey, don't waste that opportunity, because that is the best time to set new habits and to get on a new track. So let's identify the purpose. And so like my purpose is motivating and inspiring others. And I figured that out through my journey when people were like, hey, can you help me with this? Dude, when are you writing a book or whatever it is? And I was like, you know what? I love doing this. And so that's the other side of running for me, is it inspires other people. Like, hey, this guy lost a limb. He is an amputee, and he's not, homeless asking for your money or looking for handouts or anything like that. Like, he keeps raising the bar. Like, what is he doing? And I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at other people saying, hey, what is this guy doing that I can do to get better? And so that's what I coined challenge immersion. And that's how running helps, not only me, but when other people see me doing it, it inspires them to start getting on that course.
Yeah. I think what you talked about, like you being able to be an image and an inspiration, right? To people to look at you and go, hey, what am I doing? And to help them, but then also you're looking to other people. Man, when we're looking further down the path for that next step towards improvement, dude, that's the big difference. Because when we do get to that point of, woe is me, dude, we're just looking at our feet. We're looking, navel gazing, so to speak. And it's
right.
Like, there is nothing to shoot for when my eyes are down at the ground and I'm just emotionally checked out and resigned to what the experience is at the moment. So you talking about, looking ahead, dude, that's vital. And I don't think many of us do. What I think is really almost like a juxtaposition, like the opposite was, dude, Rich, when you first started out, you called it chasing air. And it's not having that purpose, not having, like that motivation. You said you were busy, but it was not a productive busy, I guess, is the way I would
right.
kind of frame it. Is that kind of what that time in life was like, or was there other stuff going on contributing to it?
Yeah. So when I was young, I mean, I had the energy of a supernova, but I had no direction. I just, and so and the reason why I call it chasing air is because many of us do this. We find the things that, we're going after, the targets that we're trying to reach. If you sit back and think about it, like, why are you doing this? And a lot of times it's because, well, culturally, that's what you do. That's a social norm, right? So when I was young in my adolescent years, with no real goals, because I didn't know what my goals should be, I saw, okay, what's the popular thing, and so when you're in high school, what's the cool thing? Well, like partying and drinking, right? And so, man, I put a lot of energy into that, and but that was never me. And so it was almost like I was living this facade because I was just trying to do what was a popular thing. And I mean, it's still to this day, it's like, you're keeping up with the Joneses. I mean, who doesn't do that? I'm going to go join a country club or whatever. Like, my wife and I were thinking about joining a country club, and like, I don't even play golf. Like, why would we do that? And so, but the biggest thing is, kind of going back, I just want to talk when you talked about you're looking to other people, we had never arrived. No one, no matter what platform you see someone standing on, that individual has not arrived. So if we don't constantly pursue growth and looking at other things, then, we're going to move backwards. And that's why, I mean, even, people that we think are popular, they kill themselves. You never know what's going on with someone else. And most of us we go through the same thing. And what ends up happening is that no one else knows what we're going through, but every single one of us that are clinically sane have the same pains. And we just have to realize that they're part of the journey through that. And when we realize that and we can define our purpose, that's the first step in getting out of the doldrums. Look, I've been on the couch in the fetal position, depressed more times than I can count. Right? I mean, none of us is ever out of the woods. We have to continuously work at this, especially when we've had trauma. We can't just say, "Oh man, I'm in a good position." Okay, well, how do I stay in this position, right? I mean, it's a constant work in progress. So, that's why I coined my framework Raw Resilience, is because it started off with the chasing air. We really have to look at, why are we doing the things that we're doing? Because if they're for other people's sake, or they're for, to fit in or whatever it is, it's all facade. And you're, it's like that country song, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, or whatever. Like, you have to truly dig deep and know where you are in the world. Take stock, take inventory of what you have and where you want to be. And then you got to do something to get there. And that's the first step.
So when you talked about, hey, I've been depressed multiple times along the way, and you're doing stuff to keep yourself out. How do you get yourself up from that position, or how have you gotten yourself up from that position when you've hit it? And then, like, how do you maintain that to where you're like,
right.
I'm doing these habits, I'm going through this process, I've got this circle of friends. Like, what are you doing that keeps you armored up against going back to that position?
So multiple things. I've had 3 transitions in my life. So one was coming from that adolescent period, figuring out where I wanted to be in the world. So I found the military, right? Cause I was never, I joined the military, not as out of a need, cause like a judge told me to or whatever. I mean, I've have a lineage of soldiers in the military. And so I kind of always, thought about that route, but I went to a military college and I fell in love, and that's where I found my purpose. And so that's the first transition. And then my second transition, I lost my arm, and so now I've spent my entire life figuring out what I want to do, where my place is in the world. And then it's all taken away from me from a roadside bomb. So now I'm having to reinvent myself again. And then the third one's when I got out of the Army, because I ended up, after that, they retired me and I ended up going back in. I was the first amputee to go back in. But then when I got out again, I had I didn't know what to do. Like that was the only thing that I'd known. So that was my third transition. For me, what really happened, and the largest transition is obviously after I lost my arm, was I started getting into endurance sports. And there's so much more to endurance sports than just fitness. But I am a huge advocate. Any part of transformation and growth, there needs to be a health aspect to it. And because one, you got to think about it's giving you self-confidence, right? Because you're going to see gains. I mean, endurance is all about consistency. It's not about like looking at your pace as my, and oh, am I better than this person and that person? Stop comparing yourself to other people. That's the first thing. But for me, physical fitness was the part of it. And so I got into triathlon shortly after losing my arm. And that catapulted my rehabilitation. And the reason is because, okay, you have a race here. I have to train this amount of time to get to that race. And so and that's how it goes into business too, right? Like, okay, I have this project that's due now, backwards plan. I need to do this same thing. So for me, a huge part of that is physical fitness, because now I have to be intentional with everything that I do, but also, what I do for a living now helps me maintain the course, because I'm constantly reminded every time that I rehearse one of my talks, which is frequently, right? Like I have to show up. I mean, people are going to pay me to come talk to them. So, every time that I rehearse a talk or I'm doing any kind of editing or whatever it is, this conversation right here that you and I are having, it just emboldens my station, my position on where I need to be and how I need to keep going. But I will say my advocacy is towards physical fitness. If you can start there, just get up, get out. And if you're not a runner or if you're obese and you don't dude, just get out and go and just try and make it easy for yourself. Every day when you get home or just when you wake up, just sleep in your running shorts and just go, whether it's walking, hiking till you get there. It doesn't matter, but try and set that habit. And guess what? If you told yourself that you were going to do, obviously, I'm probably in a different position than everyone else, but if you told yourself you were going to run for 30 minutes this morning and you're not feeling it, you feel crappy or you feel sluggish or whatever it is, dude, just get out and do 5 minutes. Who cares? Go walk around the block, because at least mentally now you did something that you said you were going to do. And just by doing that, you had now built a level of self-confidence for the day. And so that is one of the easiest ways to get off the couch. And so that's what I did. My oldest daughter called the couch my bed. And that's what really turned me around. I was like, man, I am not showing up in life how I want to, right? I was staying up at night to get that last Copenhagen dip in, and, I was overweight, and I was like, I'm not going to fall back into this hole. And I hadn't ran in years. And so I don't even know if I had running shoes at the time. I just remember throwing on some shoes and I just went. And then I just said, I'm going to do this every day. So anyways, that's one of my biggest things is if we can, have a level of physical fitness and set a goal, once you get out there, okay, now schedule a 5K. Okay. Now get a training program and do it. And what you'll realize is, okay, I need to sleep enough to recover. I need to eat well so I can perform better. Oh, this is time consuming. Now I need to be intentional with the time that I do have. And so everything starts to kind of come together with physical fitness and a training plan. And not to mention, the other health aspects, of it. So that is how I do it.
I think showing up for yourself is almost like that first step, right? Like you talked about, whether it's 5 minutes when you plan for 30, but you're still at least keeping the commitment to yourself and you're showing up there. Dude, that's so vital, because I think it's when we're fighting that depression, it's like you just find the excuses to stay on the couch. You know you need to go do something, but it's one of those of, this is so much easier, I just want to stay here, and you relegate yourself to that position.
Well, that's why I think running is so easy. In the initial stages, it's not expensive. Now I have a race tomorrow. I'm looking at all my gear. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so, once you get into it, but to get started, shoes and shorts, man, that's it. Just go. But the biggest part of that in inducing any kind of new habit is being kind to yourself when you miss a day. So, okay, I have a morning regime that I like to follow. So things happen. I mean, especially, when we, for all of us that have children, we know, like, inevitably a baby's going to wake up and say, Daddy, I have poopy or whatever. And you got 2 hours of sleep, and now, you're all thrown off, and that happens. Just try and get it in. If you get it in later, just because you didn't get it in at the time you said you were, or just because you missed a day, that doesn't mean you're terrible. It just means you're human. So don't let that pain you. Don't let that ruin your day. Because a lot of times I've done that before. I'm a light switch. if I don't get all the boxes checked, I could have 100 boxes and I get 99. I mean, that's like a great grade on a test. I'm going to tear myself down because I didn't do it all. And so I'm very careful in not letting that bother me. Hey, let's think about why did I not get everything done? Is there anything that I can change about it? Or are there certain things that are out of my control? And so, that I think is another big thing, is controlling the things, like the old, what's the AA, the serenity prayer. I mean, that's perfect. I'm not the most religious person, but I mean, that's one of the best, statements out there, is that, like, man, like, I can't control that I lost my arm. I mean, it's just, like, it is what it is. I have one hand. Hey, get it done. And so, but I think there's a fine level of, being tough on yourself and then being mean to yourself. I do like being tough on myself, but at the same time, I try not to be mean to myself. Does that make sense? Like tearing myself down, like that's not productive, and that's just going to spiral us back onto the couch in the fetal position. But we can be tough on ourselves. I think there's nothing wrong with that. We just have to have grace when we're doing it.
What would you say is the difference between being tough on yourself to where you're holding yourself to a standard versus then being cruel or mean, like self-deprecating? What if you went to run, for that 30 minutes, what are the two different ways you would be talking and treating yourself based off those two different perspectives?
So for me, being mean to yourself or cruel is like, oh my gosh, you're such a dirt bag. That you could have done that this morning. You're terrible. You're scum. You're, like those kind of things. Being tough on yourself is like, hey man, yeah, you know what? You should have done that this morning. You should have, but you know what? I'll get it because I am a bad man. I'm going to get after it. And so that to me, it's almost like being real with yourself, because all through this, like, look, I'm not saying be soft. When I say have grace and all that stuff, I'm in no way saying, tiptoe around. No, be direct with yourself, be raw with yourself. And I mean, black and white. And so, but as soon as we start labeling things in a negative way, that's when the spiral occurs. But if we can be tough on ourselves and be real with ourselves, as far as saying like, hey, yeah, this is what happened. I could have done better. And you know what? I will. And I always carry a composition notebook around with me. I'm so old school, but, a lot of times whenever I'm feeling anxious or where I journal, so I might try and meditate, but then I'll go through and I'll journal. It's like, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is why I think I'm feeling this way. Okay, I haven't made any sales, or I just got fired from my job, or, I was, for me, patience with your children is a big one. So, maybe I raise my voice with my kids and I feel badly about it, and now I'm going out of town, won't see them for 3 days. Whatever it is say, okay, well, how can we fix that? What can I do differently next time? Or, if we're talking about sales or job, am I following the process that I laid out when I was in a positive emotional state? Yes, you are. Well, then, hey, guess what? The pains are they're part of the process. And as soon as we realize that, then, hey, we're back on track. Or, you know what? I'm not following those. Okay, well, get your act together. We'll get them next time, right? Or maybe tomorrow morning you come up with a different plan. But all of that, I just took that, and I don't like to call it a negative emotional state, so to speak, because our brain is telling us something for a reason. We are feeling depressed or anxious for a reason. So let's not waste that opportunity to do something about it. Because again, that's when transformation occurs. When we are the most vulnerable is when transformation occurs. So if you want to make a change, when you are in these, hyper states of anxiety or depression, and I know that it's difficult, but trust me, start writing. Start writing in your journal. Hey, this is how I feel. This is why, I think I feel this way. Okay, what is going to make me, get out of this? And now you have this plan. For me, it works 10 out of 10. You have this plan. And since you were in that vulnerable state when you came up with these things, you're in a much better position to transform and get out of it instead of just continuing that spiral. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And I just wanted to, kind of have like a scenario laid out, because I think sometimes we can understand the definition and the intent, but maybe not what it looks like in reality. And so
right.
I think I'm holding myself to the standard. I'm in fact, like you talked about, being mean to myself and demeaning. And so that's where I'm like, hey, let's put some
context
to it. Yeah, exactly. Because I think that helps. I know it's helped me in times where I'm like, I get it, but I don't fully get it.
Right.
So I want to go back, and it's like you've had 2 times where in these transitions and then the identity, right? When the IED went off in 2005 and you lost your left arm, and then when you retired from the military, that's that second time. Whether you're a vet who is retiring or you're somebody that's like from corporate, being laid off or retiring there, we've had our identity in that role, in that position that we've done.
It's all relative.
Yeah. I mean, it's a universal thing. I think when we leave something that we've been in for a long time and found our competence and confidence as well, when you transition out of that kind of a situation, how do you find your new identity and not have it still wrapped up where it's like, hey, I was the high school, quarterback, and you're still living that highlights. How do you now transition to where it's like, I'm still kicking butt in the day to day of now, where who I was isn't who I am?
Purpose, 100%, start now at the purpose, because the whole framework is like a battle drill. So raw resilience, we look at purpose. We're asking why. Cause this needs to happen now. We don't wait until the adversity has hit, because, that's, raw resilience is like a battle drill in the military. And so a battle drill is something that we don't train until we get it right. We train until we can't get it wrong. And so that way, no matter what happens, look, the plan, as we say, is never going to survive first contact, but at least we're postured in a better manner than we would have been otherwise. So when we start with our purpose and asking why, and I always call it taking inventory, like get raw with yourself and figure out, what do you believe your purpose here is? Okay. And then when we look at mindset, we start looking at the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And basically what that means is, when we talk about a growth mindset, that's when we start to understand that the pains we're feeling are just part of the process. They're part of the journey. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. That's just a part of life. Now, some of us are we've gone through more traumatic events than others. And some of us are we're chemically imbalanced, right? I mean, just genetically, we're more emotional than other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing we can do with that, but we can't control that. So it might be tougher for us to start in that mindset. But what we're trying to do is look at everything through a positive lens. And instead of saying, so for me, for example, when I talk about a growth mindset, had I been asked to be on a triathlon team with 2 arms, I would have said no, because I would be scared to fail. I would be scared to take that leap. I knew what I was good at. I was good at running. I was good at weapon system, all this stuff in the military. I wouldn't want other people to see me fail. Well, after I lost my arm, I'm like, what do I have to lose? I'm already at the bottom, right? And then taking every time that we fail or we didn't quite get there, it starts to become innate in us. And like, okay, just like I was talking about journaling, what could I do differently? When is the next time I can get up to bat? Because here's what I'm going to do before I get up, before I get on deck. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z as part of my plan to get better. And so we're just looking at everything through a different lens. And then the process is really that challenge immersion, because once we start looking and challenging ourselves, we find an ambitious target, and that's why I love physical fitness. Let's say, okay, I have a race in 4 months. Well, now I'm going to do something every single day to get to that point. And what it does is, since I'm immersed in that, it's time consuming. So everything that I have to do is intentional, but as long as I make sure that I get that done, because it will be hard, it's like me with an arm. It's easier for me to problem solve, I think, because I had to do it every day. The way that I put toothpaste on my toothbrush, the way that I had to button my shirt or my collar, I'm constantly figuring out problems. And what does that do? It retrains my brain to not think of a problem or an adversarial circumstance as an issue, but just another part of life. And so I call it the emotional threshold. And so emotional threshold is like a highway with a 2-lane highway. And we don't want to be above it because we're in a hyper state, and we don't want to be below it because it's too tough to get back into that emotional threshold, but we can raise the entire road. And that's what raw resilience does. That's what, working on our purpose, mindset, and our process does, is it postures us to be resilient when those things occur. So if we can practice those things now, when these things do occur, and I wish that I had known this, during these times, then it's just another part of the process. Hey, yeah, look, the only thing that I knew my entire adult life was the military. And that's tough. Like, let's be real, right? Let's be raw with ourselves. It is tough and it sucks, but I'm not going to let that define me, because I know who my purpose is. So let's find something else that aligns with my purpose, and let's go. In comes physical fitness. That is the easiest thing to do. So you're laid off from your job. You're laid off from anything. Okay. Challenge. Set that challenge through running, cycling, rowing, whatever it is, weightlifting. It doesn't matter. But that is the easiest thing that you can do, because it takes nothing for you to go out in the yard. Look, when in my first deployment, we got mortared, and our operating base got burned to the ground. And we were so ticked off because all of our weights got melted, right? And so we literally, there are a couple barbells that weren't, so we took these 5-gallon buckets and filled them up with cement. And so we would use that. So, you can use anything. You can, I don't know, go out and push trash cans. I mean, it is that simple. But what it's going to do is it's going to get you back into a positive mindset and get you back into your emotional threshold where you want to be. And all it's doing is just posturing you for those events. So, for me, it was tough getting out of the military. When I got out the second time, one of the reasons I just got done with my 4th deployment in Afghanistan, And I went through no reintegration, right? So I just came from pretty much complete autonomy, where me and a couple other captains, we were running around Afghanistan in a combat zone doing whatever we want. But I mean, we were setting charges. I mean, we were doing a lot of stuff. And when I got back, I got into a bad bar fight. I mean, it was rough. And so when the cops came, the cops were like, look, man, we're not arresting you. You just go. And I was like, no, I'm going back in the bar. And the cop grabs me and I headbutted this cop. And so from there, I mean, next thing I don't know where the strength came from. There was like 4 cops on me. They put me in the cop car and I had my prosthetic on and I busted out one of the windows of the cop car. And cause I was just so, I mean, I'm embarrassed to tell the story. Right. And I remember the funny part was, I remember one of them talking to another one was like, we don't know how to handcuff that. And so, you know, fortunately, the charges were dropped. I was not court-martialed. And, you know, but I realized that my time because there are certain things that I wanted to do in the military that they didn't materialize, and I was getting back into old habits, and it was time for me to move forward. And so I was fortunate with that. And you asked about, so one other thing I think is a support network. And you know, we always see at the Hollywood, like Rambo is a real quiet, lonesome guy. I mean, even if Rambo were real, I mean, that's like a needle in a haystack, right? Like you're never going to find a guy like that. Everybody's going to tell you, you need a support network, whether it's a wife, running buddies or whomever. Life is so much easier when you have someone to share it with. And so that's another thing that I have been fortunate in, is relying on family members, but also going through veteran networks, you know, VFWs and stuff like that. But finding like-minded people, as well as, you know, just normal, you know, like my family, they don't get it, because you know, a lot of people don't get it if they haven't been to war. So I have the VFW people. Well, a lot of my running buddies, they don't get it. They've never been to war, but we're like-minded, you know, like when you run together for 5 hours, you know, you end up getting close. So, you know, to kind of put everything in context, the first thing is we need to position ourselves to be resilient now. Don't wait. We have to start working on our purpose, start looking at things through a different lens and a growth mindset, and then start working on immersing ourselves in a challenge so that we are getting used to solving those problems. So if we can do that now, it'll be that much easier later. So one, working on that battle drill, finding a good support network. So those are the 2 main things. And then, and I guess I will add 3, never waste the opportunity of what you may think is a negative emotional time. You need to take that and turn it around and say, hey, how can I get out of this? What are some steps that I can take, you know, and jot them down, and then, hey man, start executing.
Yeah, 100%, man. In light of what you've laid out there, Rich, you talked about making sure that you can't fail. Are there additional steps within that, or is that something that you kind of add on to it to make sure that you're like, hey, I'm going to go do this, and I'm confident that I'm going to succeed because I've done, you know, this work, this research, whatever the case may be, to make sure that you're, you know, not going to fail? What do you take into account there to make that the case?
So one, I will say, I do not, you may fail. That's, you know, like I'm just positioning myself. So in the event that I fail, no, just another step in the journey, just another step on the path. And what we're doing in that is we're taking power away from the emotion. You know, Chad Wright is just a guy whom I adore. That's kind of a weird way to say it, but he's a retired Navy SEAL, and he's from Georgia, one of my Georgia kin. And he in one interview he said, you know, we were taking it. He was overseas in the Middle East, and they were taking a lot of fire. And he said he looked at 2 of the leaders. One of them was just running around like a chicken with his head cut off. not necessarily like scared, but just like yelling and barking and all this other stuff. And the other guy was calmly on the radio. And next thing you know, they start hearing bombs, and the enemy was taken away from the guy that was on the radio, had called in indirect fire on the enemy position. And his point is that our emotions are wonderful things, but they're terrible leaders. And if we give them power to control us, we're going to end up in a much worse spot. And so that guy that was on the radio, he just relied on his training. He knew, he had trained for that moment. He relied on it. He was calm, and he was probably experiencing similar emotions as the other guy, but he acted in a different manner, whereas the other gentleman was letting his emotions control his behavior, which, freaks everybody out. And so, that's what this whole thing does, is it's not taking away the failure. It's just positioning you to handle it differently, so you don't spiral out of control, right? So when you do fail, hey, look, for me, it's like, hey, I didn't get this one. Dude, I'm immediately ready to get okay, let's get back to training and figure out, what went wrong, what happened, and how I can, for example, last year, I had a 50-mile race in Colorado, and I was dealing with some iliotibial band issues, IT band issues in my left leg. And, so when I got done with that race, I didn't do poorly. And for me, it was a failure because it blew up, and I'd done so many things to keep that from happening. But whatever, it happened. So as soon as I was done with that race, okay, what am I going to do differently to make sure this doesn't happen again? And so far that has gone well. And I mean, I didn't wait. I didn't, I immediately jumped back into, here's the next plan. And here's how I'm going to execute it so I can get better. So that's kind of, I know I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question, but I just want to make sure that we know there will always be failure, and that's okay.
Yeah. Right? And I think it's looking at it. You're not just going, hey, this is going to be a bed of roses. I know I'm going to succeed just because I've planned, but you're looking beyond that to say, hey, this could be an issue. I'm going to address it this way. And so you're coming up like with contingency plans, right? You're shoring up, and what, if things don't go the way that you want, you don't get that result. You've done as much as you can to get the result that you were after. You did your best, and you did everything that you could to line up that success. You're looking beyond to see what the potential break points are. And so is that like how you would say kind of like the process you're going through is you're looking at it as far as like, hey, I'm going to do this triathlon. What are the challenges going to be? How can I get around it, rather than why is this going to happen? You're looking for, how do I get solutions to potential problems? Is that a good way to say it?
We want to look at what are each of the problems that could arise, and then we want to mitigate them. We're never going to be able to eliminate them. But if we can figure out ways to mitigate them, then that's one thing. But I think we're kind of talking about two different things here. One, there's execution of the target that's in front of us. Two, there's reaction to how the execution was completed. And so that's what I'm talking about, is our emotional perspective on how we executed the plan. If it fails, if we have not, worked through our framework when it fails, like when we're laid off or whatever, the project fails, doesn't end up getting adopted by your company, or the client doesn't take it, whatever that may be, you didn't get the big sale, it fell through. Well, by working through our framework, we're not letting that control us. I mean, yeah, it sucks. And the way that we feel when that happens, there's two roads there. Well, if we have worked through our framework, well, now we just understand, hey, all right, on to the next one. Like that was a tough hit. Let's see what we can learn from it so it doesn't happen again, but let's get on to the next one. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, when you're talking about just planning for one project, I mean, yeah, that's to me, I don't know. I guess I was kind of looking at it from a different way of, not looking at one problem. Does that make sense? I was more looking at the emotional perspective afterwards.
Yeah. And making sure that we do have our emotions in check and it's not, running us, but instead we're in the controlling seat. Totally makes sense, man. That's where I was like, just wanting to touch base and kind of ask for clarification.
Yeah.
That one. So, cause sometimes we can hear something, think we know what it means. And it's like, no, that's not what I was trying to say. So I appreciate you clarifying and expanding on that. Cause that's awesome, man. I mean, coming out and being in control of your emotions rather than having the emotions from that situation spiral us into that point of depression or frustration and, then trying to pick ourselves back. I mean, that's a crucial thing to address and be ready, to handle and have a positive perspective on. So I love the way that you express that there. Thank you.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is digging into them. When you get into these hyper states of, depressive or anxious states, dig into it, figure out like, hey, this is an important thing that's happening. My brain is doing something right now. Like, let's figure out why. Okay. What are you telling me right now? Okay. I think that is very big instead of just, I feel like this and, so yeah.
Totally. Well, Rich, dude, I totally appreciate all that you've shared about, the different transitions, how you found your purpose, how you take your purpose and expand it. And then you're daily taking action, reverse engineering it. Dude, those are all vital steps to getting ourselves from where we may feel like we're stuck today and kind of going, woe is me, to getting down the road, to, the goals and the places that we want and the dreams that we have, man. I really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark.
Absolutely. 100%, bro. How can guys connect with you outside of the podcast, Rich?
So, richingram.com is my website. There's a contact form there. Please, ask any questions, whatever it is, but my email address also rich@richingram.com. Pretty simple. Reach out to me and, would love to help, discuss, chat, whatever. Hit me up.
Rich, I appreciate it again. Thank you so much, bro.
All right, Mike. Appreciate you.